I always told him not to trust anybody. And he did.
Amanda Rodriguez says it cost her brother-in-law his life. Lopez told police they were going to purchase 2 ounces of meth.
From a notorious drug lord's son to a father in a violent city, here are 6 stories of cartel members caught by their victims' fathers. 1. El Chapo. In August 2016, in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, the son of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman was kidnapped by a rival cartel. This incident became a significant event in the ongoing battle between powerful cartels in Mexico. El Chapo was one of the most feared and notorious drug lords in the world. His family was known for its brutal tactics and its ability to strike fear into their enemies. But even the most powerful can find themselves vulnerable in the dangerous world of cartels. The kidnapping of El Chapo's son was seen as a bold move by the rival cartel. It was an attempt to send a message to El Chapo and to show that no one was untouchable, not even his family. The situation created a tense standoff between the 2 cartels, as El Chapo's family worked to secure his son's release. Negotiations began almost immediately after the kidnapping occurred. El Chapo's family used their influence and connections to open a line of communication with the rival cartel. The negotiations were intense, but they were also quick, as the rival cartel knew the risks involved in holding the son of such a powerful figure. They also knew that El Chapo's family would stop at nothing to get him back. Eventually, the rival cartel agreed to release El Chapo's son without any violence taking place. The details of the negotiation remain unclear, but it is widely believed that a deal was made, possibly involving a significant sum of money or other concessions. The fact that the situation was resolved without bloodshed is rare in the world of cartels, where violence is usually the first and only option. 2. Nemesio Oseguera. Cervantes. Nemesio Oseguera. Cervantes, known as El Mencho, is one of the most wanted cartel leaders in Mexico. He is the leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, or CJNG, one of the most powerful and violent criminal organizations in the country. El Mencho's rise to power has been marked by extreme violence and a relentless pursuit of control over the drug trade in Mexico. But his reign of terror has also made him a target for many, including the families of his victims. El Mencho's cartel has been responsible for countless deaths, kidnappings, and acts of violence across Mexico. The families of his victims, particularly the fathers, have often found themselves driven to seek justice on their own terms. In some cases, these fathers have joined local vigilante groups known as autodefensas. These groups were formed by citizens who were tired of the government's inability to protect them from the cartels. They took up arms to defend their communities and to fight back against the criminal organizations that had terrorized them for so long. The fight between the vigilantes and the cartels has led to numerous clashes. In some instances, the vigilantes have been successful in capturing or killing members of El Mencho's cartel. These actions are often celebrated in their communities, but they also come with significant risks. The cartels do not take such actions lightly, and they often retaliate with brutal force. But El Mencho himself has managed to remain elusive, despite the efforts of both the authorities and the vigilante groups. His ability to avoid capture has only added to his mystique and his reputation as one of the most dangerous men in Mexico. 3. The Vigilante Father. In Guerrero. In 2014 in Guerrero, Mexico, a father took the law into his own hands after his daughter was killed by cartel members. The father was devastated by the loss of his daughter. She was taken from him by the brutal violence of the cartels that plagued the region. But rather than waiting for justice that might never come, he decided to act. He joined forces with local vigilantes who were also fed up with the terror imposed by the cartels. Together, they set out to track down the men responsible for his daughter's death. The father's mission was dangerous. The cartels in Guerrero were known for their ruthlessness and their willingness to kill anyone who stood in their way. But the father was driven by a deep sense of loss and a desire for justice. He and the vigilantes spent weeks gathering information, planning their move, and finally confronting the cartel members responsible for the killing. When they found them, there was no hesitation. The father and his group captured the men, and in an act of vengeance, they executed them. But what happens when a father, armed with nothing but his anguish, takes matters into his own hands? 4. Alejandro Mendoza. In 2013, Alejandro Mendoza, a farmer living in Michoacán, Mexico, faced a tragedy that would change his life forever. The Knights Templar Cartel, one of the most feared criminal organizations in the region, killed his son. This brutal act was not an isolated incident in Michoacán, where the cartel had spread terror for years. The Knights Templar Cartel was known for its extreme violence and control over large parts of Michoacán. They extorted money from local businesses, kidnapped innocent people, and killed anyone who opposed them. When Mendoza's son was murdered, he was devastated, but he was also determined to seek justice. He could not rely on the authorities, who were often too scared or corrupt to take action against the cartel, so he decided to join the local vigilante groups known as autodefensas. The autodefensas were formed by ordinary citizens who were fed up with the government's inability to protect them from the cartels. These vigilantes took up arms to defend their families and communities from the violence that had taken over their lives. Mendoza, driven by his grief and anger, quickly became an active member of the group. He was determined to find and punish those responsible for his son's death. The autodefensas in Michoacán were not just a small group of people with guns. They were a well-organized force that grew rapidly as more people joined them to fight against the cartel. Mendoza and his fellow vigilantes patrolled their towns, set up roadblocks, and launched operations to capture cartel members. Mendoza's dedication and leadership skills quickly earned him respect within the group. He played a key role in several operations that led to the capture of cartel members. These operations were dangerous, but Mendoza was motivated by a deep desire for justice. He knew that if the cartel members responsible for his son's death were not stopped, they would continue to kill and terrorize others. In one of the operations, Mendoza and his group managed to capture several members of the Knights Templar cartel. These men were directly involved in the murder of his son. The moment of their capture was a turning point for Mendoza. He felt a sense of relief, but also a deep sadness, knowing that nothing could bring his son back. The captured cartel members were handed over to the authorities, but this did not mark the end of Mendoza's involvement in the fight against the cartels. 5. Gilberto Martinez. In 2017, Gilberto Martinez, a father living in Sinaloa, Mexico, faced a similar tragedy when his daughter was kidnapped and killed by cartel members. Sinaloa was a region dominated by powerful drug cartels, and like many others who had lost loved ones to cartel violence, Martinez found little hope in the justice system. The authorities were often overwhelmed or compromised by the cartels, leaving families like Martinez's to fend for themselves. But instead of giving up, Martinez decided to take justice into his own hands. He spent months tracking down the people responsible for his daughter's death. This was not an easy task, as the cartel members were well protected and operated in the shadows. Martinez had to be careful, as any wrong move could cost him his life. But he was determined to find the killers, driven by a deep need for justice and closure. Martinez's quest for justice was a lonely and dangerous journey. He had no formal training in investigation or law enforcement, but he relied on his instincts and the help of a few trusted friends. He gathered information from locals, pieced together clues, and slowly began to close in on the men who had taken his daughter's life. After months of relentless effort, Martinez finally located one of the cartel members involved in his daughter's murder. The moment of confrontation was intense. Martinez had waited a long time for this, and now he had the man who had caused him so much pain right in front of him. But Martinez did not act out of blind rage. Instead, he captured the cartel member and turned him over to the police. 6. Ciudad Juarez. In 2020, a father in Ciudad Juarez, Mexico, faced a heartbreaking tragedy when his son was killed by cartel hitmen. Ciudad Juarez is known for its violence, especially due to cartel activities. The father, feeling the weight of his loss and the failure of the justice system, decided to take matters into his own hands. He could not stand by and do nothing while his son's killers walked free. With the help of a few close friends, the father began his quest for revenge. It was not an easy task in a city where fear often keeps people silent, but his determination was stronger than his fear. He tracked down the men responsible for his son's death. It took time and effort, but he eventually located one of the hitmen who had taken his son's life. The father and his friends managed to capture the hitman. They knew they had to act quickly because in a place like Ciudad Juarez, any delay could mean losing their chance. The father, driven by his grief and anger, severely beat the hitman. His friends joined him, but it was clear that the father was the one leading this act of retribution. Afterward, the hitman was handed over to the authorities. The father did not flee or hide. Instead, he stood by his actions, believing that he had done what the justice system had failed to do. In the eyes of many in Ciudad Juarez, he became a local hero. Don't forget to comment down your thoughts on this. And while you're down there, make sure to hit that subscribe button as well.